Esmail Ghaani, born August 8, 1957, is an Iranian brigadier general in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and commander of its Quds force, a division primarily responsible for extraterritorial military and clandestine operations. Leader of Iran Ali Khamenei appointed Ghaani as commander of the Quds force on January 3, 2020 after General Qasem Soleimani was assassinated by a targeted U.S. drone strike near Baghdad International Airport. He was born in the late 1950s in the city of Tabriz, a pilgrimage city and the second most populous city in Iran. He met Soleimani on the Iran-Iraq war fronts. He joined the Revolutionary Guard in 1980.
Islamic Republic commander threatens American officials with revenge on U.S. soil. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard's Quds force, Esmail Ghaani, once again has threatened American officials with revenge for the killing of his predecessor Qasem Soleimani, saying the response might come from within your house. In a speech on Friday, January 1, in a ceremony to mark the first anniversary of Soleimani's death, Ghaani said, "Everywhere in the world a man might be found who is ready to punish those responsible." Soleimani was killed in a targeted U.S. air attack in the early hours of January 3, 2020 as he arrived at Baghdad airport and his motorcade pulled away. As commander of the Qods force, he was Iran's main architect of building a network of state and non-state allies and proxies in the region to expand the Islamic Republic's influence. Iran has repeatedly vowed to take revenge from the specific people responsible for making the decision and carrying it out. That would include President Donald Trump, who took the responsibility for making the decision, and other high-level U.S. officials. Ghaani said, "They have to know that even from within their house there might be people willing to respond to this crime." The threat is a direct reference to possible acts of terror in the United States. Ghaani on Wednesday, December 30, had made a similar threat in a speech in the Iranian parliament, saying those responsible for Soleimani's killing should learn how to live secretly like Salman Rushdie. In 1989, Iran's leader Ruhollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, or religious ruling, calling for the death of British Indian author Salman Rushdie for blasphemy in his 1988 book, The Satanic Verses. Rushdie lived in secrecy and under protection for many years, and his public appearances remain limited. Tensions have been high in recent days since a rocket attack by Iran's militia proxies on the U.S. embassy in Baghdad on December 20, followed by Trump's stern warning to Iran against harming any Americans. The U.S. has also sent a guided missile submarine into the Persian Gulf and flown B-52 heavy bombers over the region as a warning to Iran not to engage in any act of revenge during the anniversary of Soleimani's death. But on Thursday, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani repeated the threat of revenge, with Iranian media full of stories about the dead general, portraying him as a hero of Iran and the Islamic world.
Soleimani's successor threatens American officials with Salman Rushdie's fate. The commander of Iran's Quds force, Esmail Ghaani, has threatened American officials in a closed-door session of the Iranian parliament convened on the approach of the first anniversary of the United States killing his predecessor, Major General Qasem Soleimani. Later, in an open session, Parliament initiated a bill for reciprocal measures against the U.S. for killing Soleimani. Ghaani told lawmakers on Wednesday, December 30, that those responsible for the assassination, which was claimed by U.S. President Donald Trump, should learn how to live secretly like Salman Rushdie, Jahan News reported. In 1989, Iran's leader Ruhollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, or religious ruling, calling for the death of British Indian author Salman Rushdie for blasphemy in his 1988 book, The Satanic Verses. Rushdie lived in secrecy and under protection for many years, and his public appearances remain limited. As commander of the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, IRGC, Quds force, Soleimani supervised Iran's regional network of state and non-state allies. He was heavily involved both in the Syrian war and in the fight against the Islamic State group in Iraq. Journalists were not present at Wednesday's parliament session and Iranian media reported only snippets of what transpired. Fars news agency quoted a member of parliament, Ahmad al-Arzabaghi, that Ghani had reported on latest developments in the region. And, on the makeup and arrangement of resistance forces, Iran's regional allies and proxies, in the region. Baghi quoted Ghani as promising that with the measures on the agenda of the resistance forces, the decline of American forces was imminent. Trump is currently reducing U.S. troop numbers from 3,500 to 2,500 in Iraq and from 4,500 to 2,500 in Afghanistan, down respectively from 7,500 and 12,000 in 2018. The U.S. has around 180,000 troops deployed overseas. With the first anniversary of Soleimani's death days away, the media and officials in Iran are portraying Soleimani as an Iranian hero and international Islamic figure. President Salman Rushdies spoke at length about the general during his weekly cabinet meeting on Wednesday, praising him for his activities since U.S. forces invaded Afghanistan in 2001 following the September 11 al-Qaeda attacks on New York and Washington. Rouhani reiterated that the expulsion of U.S. forces from the Middle East would be final revenge for Soleimani's death. Iranian officials have often spoken of expelling U.S. forces as a measure of revenge. They have signaled caution during the remaining weeks of Trump's presidency. Tensions are running high in Iraq in the run-up to the anniversary of the January 3 killings, when 4 Iraqis, including Abu Mahdi al-Muhantiz, the leader of a prominent militia, died alongside Soleimani and 3 other Iranians. Feelings have been exacerbated. Link is external, by Trump's December 23 pardon of 4 Blackwater military contractors convicted of killing 14 Iraqi civilians in Baghdad in 2007. Hassan Nasrallah, leader of Lebanese Hezbollah, on Sunday repeated earlier remarks that his group and other Iranian allies should be careful in the last few weeks of Trump's administration, calling the defeated president angry and crazy.
US B-52 bombers fly over Persian Gulf to caution Iran. 2 strategic U.S. bombers have flown over the Persian Gulf in response to what U.S. officials say are worrying signs that Iran may be planning attacks against American or allied targets in the Middle East in the coming days. The B-52 bomber mission, flown round-trip from Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota on Wednesday, December 30, was the second of its kind this month. The missions reflect growing concern in Washington, in the final weeks of President Donald Trump's administration, that Iran will order further military retaliation for the U.S. government's killing last January 3 of top Iranian military commander General Qasem Soleimani. With the first anniversary of his death days away, the media and officials in Iran are portraying Soleimani as an Iranian hero and international Islamic figure. Top officials call for revenge against the United States on a daily basis. The current commander of the Qods force, Ismail Ghaani, and President Hassan Rouhani, among others, renewed these calls on Wednesday. Adding to the tension was a rocket attack last week on the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad by Iranian-supported Shiite militia groups. No one was killed, but Trump tweeted afterward that Iran was on notice. Some friendly health advice to Iran: if 1 American is killed, I will hold Iran responsible. Think it over, Trump wrote on December 23. In announcing Wednesday's bomber flight, the head of U.S. Central Command said it was a defensive move, while not mentioning Iran by name. The United States continues to deploy combat-ready capabilities into the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility to deter any potential adversary and make clear that we are ready and able to respond to any aggression directed at Americans or our interests, said General Frank McKenzie, the commander of Central Command. We do not seek conflict, but no one should underestimate our ability to defend our forces or to act decisively in response to any attack. While Iranian officials call for revenge for Soleimani's killing, they need to be cautious during the remaining weeks of Trump's presidency and also consider not spoiling a chance of improving ties with Joe Biden, who might be more willing to ease tensions. But an unnamed senior military officer told the Associated Press that Iran may be considering or planning more complex and broader attacks against American targets or interests in the Middle East. The officer mentioned advanced weapons flowing from Iran into Iraq recently and indications that Iraqi Shiite militia leaders may have met officers of the Qods force. He added that Iran may be considering attacks on economic targets similar to the destructive drone and missile attack in September 2019 on Saudi Arabia's oil installations. While the U.S. military has taken steps to signal its willingness to act in case of an Iranian adventure, it has also indicated there are no plans or orders to take unprovoked action against Iran. The B-52 flights this month and the transit of a U.S.-guided missile submarine last week through the Strait of Hormuz were meant as clear defensive signals.
Hezbollahs Nasrallah highlights Iran's backing, threatens revenge for Soleimani. The leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah claimed on Sunday, December 27, that his group has doubled the number of precision-guided missiles in 1 year and Israel has failed to prevent it from acquiring them. In an end-of-year interview with the Beirut-based Al Mayadeen TV, Hassan Nasrallah claimed his group has the capability to strike anywhere in Israel. Hezbollah has been receiving weapons and cash from Iran since its very inception in the early 1980s. Following Tehran's lead, it sent forces into Syria to defend Bashar al-Assad's government as an insurgency gained momentum in 2012. Israel has been bombing Iranian and Hezbollah targets there for several years, trying to prevent a further entrenchment of Iranian forces and shipment of weapons through Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel has expressed concern in recent months that Hezbollah is trying to set up production facilities to make precision-guided missiles. Nasrallah repeated earlier remarks that Hezbollah and other Iranian allies must be careful in the last few weeks of President Donald Trump's presidency. He called Trump angry and crazy. The Hezbollah leader, who has been living in hiding for years, vowed Iran and its proxies will avenge the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani, the former commander of Iran's Qods force by an American air attack in Baghdad on January 3. Nasrallah said, "I am missing him a lot. That revenge is coming no matter how long it takes," he told Al Mayadeen TV, sitting with a picture of Soleimani to his left. Nasrallah declared that Soleimani was instrumental in providing large amounts of money from Iran's oil revenues to Hezbollah, in addition to weapons and missiles. Various estimates of Iran's past financial assistance to the group range from $500 to $700 million annually. Currently, it is hard to gauge Iran's ability to provide money given its dire financial situation resulting from U.S. sanctions. Nasrallah disclosed that after the 33-day war with Israel in 2006, Iran paid the rent and living expenses of 200,000 families for 1 year whose homes had been destroyed or damaged in Israeli attacks. The fact that Iran paid up to $30,000 to families in 2006 has been public knowledge in Lebanon. But the extent of the assistance is staggering in a country of 4 million people at the time. If the average handout to each family was $20,000, Iran spent at least $4 billion that went mainly to the Shiite community. Addressing the incoming U.S. administration of President-elect Joe Biden, Nasrallah said Iran would not negotiate with the U.S. on behalf of its allies or discuss conflicts in the region. He said Tehran would talk with Washington only about the Iranian nuclear deal, from which Trump withdrew. Biden has vowed to return to the 2015 nuclear deal that Trump withdrew from in May 2018 and demanded renegotiation that would include Iran's malign behavior in the region.